Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tim Taylor. Andy texted me a couple weeks ago and said he was going to be out of town and asked if I would teach. And I was glad to. And then I got a text, or I guess I got an email from the audio visual people. This is going to be on YouTube, and that scared me. I'm afraid this may go viral and I'll get famous. And I just don't know how I'll handle that. So I'm kind of worried about that. But we're studying the difficult sayings of Jesus. I can't talk as long as Andy does about one thing. So I've got 5 prepared, and a couple more I can bring in if I have to. But I would love input from y'all. We're going to begin tonight with Luke 17:37. Before we do that, we'll have a prayer. And Ellis, would you mind leading us in prayer? Thank you. Okay, Luke 17:37. We're going to begin with that verse. Before we do that verse, I learned a lot about some of these things and some viewpoints I'd never really considered before. And it reminded me of something I heard someone relate several years ago. Back in the early 70s, country music singer Johnny Cash decided he wanted to make a movie about the life of Christ. I've never seen the movie. I would like to, see if I can find it on Netflix or something sometime. It's called The Gospel Road. And he had a major part in writing the transcript of it, planning it, picking out who the stars are going to be. I think he was in it some. I think his wife might have played Mary Magdalene, maybe. I think she was in the movie anyway. But he premiered the movie at the old Bear Court Theater. I think it's on West End, somewhere in the west part of town. Hillsborough Road? Okay. He premiered the movie there, and he invited ministers from religious groups all over Middle Tennessee to be there for the premiere. And then after the movie, he took questions and answers. And one of the questions he got was, what did you learn in the making of this movie about the life of Christ? And the answer that he gave was, well, I did a lot of research. I wanted this to be biblically accurate. And I wanted this to bring honor to Jesus. And I did a whole lot of research. I read a lot of commentaries. I went through the Bible, and he said one of the biggest lessons I learned is that the Bible can shed a lot of light on commentaries. And I kind of got that idea as I was looking, because some of these sayings of Jesus, there are 3, 4, 5 different opinions on what they mean. And I'm not going to bring every one of them up on these, but I'll bring several up. Some of them I'd heard before, some of them I never even thought about, and I don't know which one's right. So we will go through and look at it. So let's begin with Luke 17:37. We're just going to read the verse first, and then we'll go from there. And they answered and said to him, "Where, Lord?" So he said to them, "Wherever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together." Now, it's really dangerous to pick out any one Bible verse and not look at the context. So in a few minutes, we're going to go back and read the verses before that. I remember probably 20, 30 years ago, I spent a lot of my time when I first started teaching. I spent the first 36 years coaching football and track. And we were at a track meet one day, and there was a team from another school. It wasn't Ezo Harding, but they were nicknamed the Eagles. And they had this verse on their team t-shirt. It had an eagle with the school logo and this verse, and they just took the last part of it. There the eagles will be gathered together. And I remember when I saw that, I thought, I don't know if I would want that on a team shirt or not, because there's another word for eagle that's used in some translation. Does anybody have another word that's used there? Vultures, yeah. That's kind of what I'd always thought, vultures. And I'm not sure that they would have wanted on their t-shirt, that's where the vultures are going to be gathered together. So let's look and see, because I did find some opinions that said that's what it means. And I found a couple that said it was like a military eagle that was something that the Roman army would use. I don't know if I quite agree with that or not, but we'll look at it and see. Could I get somebody on this side of the room to read verses 20 through 27? And then if I could get somebody on this side to read 20 through 27. I hope I said 27. Somebody on this side to read 28 through 37. Let's look and see what Jesus is talking about and look at the context of this. Ellis? Okay, thank you. And somebody over here read verses 28 through 37, please. Okay, that puts a little context on the question, where, Lord? What they're asking about is, where are these people going to go? Somebody's going to be here, somebody's going to be taken away. Somebody's going to be one place, somebody's going to be the other, and they were together at the beginning. And he's describing other things and answering their question about when is the kingdom of heaven going to come? Okay, is there anything that strikes any of you from just reading these verses about Jesus' answer about when the kingdom of heaven is going to appear? Okay. Any other comments? Unexpected. Okay, that's a great one. Unexpected. It appears that life is going to be going on as normal. People are buying, people are selling. They're doing all the regular activities they would have on a daily basis, and they're not expecting the second coming. Even though Noah had been preaching for many, many, many years and telling people, you got to repent, God's not going to put up with this anymore, I don't think the people were expecting there to be a flood. I think they probably all thought Noah's crazy building this huge boat out here in the middle of nowhere. I don't think they were expecting anything to happen, and on the day it happened, I imagine they were all in shock. I don't think the people of Sodom and Gomorrah had an announcement that fire and brimstone are going to come down on you today. They were going about their daily business, and it happened. And I think in the same way, going to be when the second coming. most of y'all are probably going to be familiar with what I'm about to say next. Is all my life I've been hearing people take any major world calamity, conflicts, wars, things that happen, and they've been saying, oh, this is what's in the Bible. You know, this is what's in Revelation. This is what Isaiah or Jeremiah were talking about. This is what Jesus was talking about. And they've taken events over and over and over again saying, this is a sign the end's about to come. Well, the end might come before we finish this class. We don't know. It's going to be unexpected. I remember when I was a kid, there were people that were saying the Cold War. That was with the end times. You know, maybe Russia is Gog and China is Magog. I mean, they would take any world event and try to form a conclusion on it that the end of the world has come. But Jesus is saying we're not going to know. He says it in many other places, but this is one where he's talking about it's going to be just a normal day. So what does he mean when we get down to our verse of interest? And they said, where, Lord? And he says, wherever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Does anybody have a thought before I give you a couple of things that I read when I was preparing for the lesson? Sir? Could be. Sometimes that could be it. I had a note in an old... Yes.
I've got one from a website I've never been on before. It's called KJV Today.
Uh-huh.
There's one, an invasion of Israel by Ptolemy, angels on earth, inside of him, and there should be three, but there's one. Eagles could be Gentiles.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, there's some sort of symbolic possibility. Just so the person doesn't seem totally sure.
Okay. I have no idea when I wrote this down. It's an old Bible that I've had for 30 or 40 years. I had written in the margin with this verse, let me see if I can find it here, that the carcass represented the utter corruption of the Jewish state. It was rotting, decomposing, it would be consumed by the vultures of our society. And I've kind of always thought, yeah, maybe that's what it's talking about. I've seen some other things too. But that is a possibility. Now, here's another possibility that I read that I never really thought about before. And it goes back and compares the fact that Jesus was talking about life is going on as normal, people buying, selling, planning, going through their everyday lives. And he was making the point, this person was making the point that it's a very common thing in nature when there's a death that the vultures or buzzards are going to start circling. 2008, our family went to Yellowstone on a vacation. And the first full day we were there, we took a wildlife tour. And I'm glad we did it. It was pretty expensive, but I'm glad we did it. When we got on the tour bus, the tour guide started out by saying, there is nothing you're going to see on this tour today that you can't see driving on your own. There's no place we're going to go that you can't drive on your own. And I'm sitting there first thinking, wow, I'm glad we did this. And then she said, but I know what to look for, and you're not going to know when you're driving. And if you're the one driving, you're not going to be able to look that closely anyway. And she said, one of my goals today, especially for those of you that are beginning your trip, is I want to tell you what to look for. So when you're looking out in the park on your own, you'll have a better chance of spotting wildlife. And here's the hint that she gave us. It was great advice because we had it help us a couple of times. She said, as you're driving through places like Lamar Valley or Hayden Valley, those are kind of wide open places and valleys where a lot of big wildlife sometimes hangs out. She said, scan the horizon. Look for birds circling around. And there was probably going to be ravens. But she said, if you see birds circling around, you need to try to find a place you can pull over and watch at a safe distance, because there is a very, very good chance that there's a carcass. That's the only reason they would be circling. They want something to eat. And it's probably going to be something that either a wolf pack or a grizzly is taking down. And the ravens are circling around hoping that they get an opportunity, if the predator takes a short rest, that they can dive in, get a quick meal, and get out before the predator fights them away. And we went to one place. They had men there that have very high-powered telescopes, and they call themselves wolfers, men and women. They call themselves wolfers. Their hobby is to set up long-range telescopes or spotting scopes and find a carcass in the distance and watch what's going on. Well, she pulled into a parking lot, and there was a couple of really nice guys there that let everybody on our tour bus take a look, and it was fascinating. We saw 3 or 4 wolves feeding on an elk carcass. It might have been a mile away, and there's no way we could have seen it with our naked eye, but we could see it very clearly. And you could see the ravens up above them, and the ravens every now and then would dive in, and the wolves would, use their paws and knock them away. But they were there, and that was a telltale sign that there was a carcass there. Well, here was the point that this other commentator made. He said, just as Jesus mentioned all the normal activities of life that would continue right up until the end time, just as surely as vultures will find a carcass to feed on, Jesus will return for the righteous and the wicked will be separated. So he was saying, his point was, Jesus was talking about the surety of this. You can know in nature that if there's a dead animal, there are going to be buzzards or vultures circling around, and they're going to take opportunity as part of God's plan in nature to clean up the decaying body and to provide nutrition for those animals. And just as sure as that's going to happen, Jesus is coming back. And there's going to be a judgment day. And the righteous are going to go with him, and the wicked are going to be consumed. So that's just another possibility I'd never thought about before. Now, what kind of application can we get from this? What difference does it make? Right. That's right. Always be ready. You never know when it's going to happen. In other places, Jesus says it's going to come as a thief in the night. A thief doesn't send you a text message and say, by the way, I'm going to break in tonight at 1 o'clock. You want to try to have your house prepared where you can withstand that. We need to have our lives prepared where if the judgment day comes, so be it. Yes, Mike? Oh. Okay.
But I was thinking about what you're saying. When you think about this carcass that is of basically no monetary value at the time of death,
Mm-hmm.
then nobody's going to sell it and get something out of that.
Right.
It's not, to me, it's not any different than the human body that we occupy. That body is not, I think what they said I think scientists said one time many years ago, maybe in places where that the value of all the products that make up our body was about 98 cents. And there's really no, there's only a few people or a few animals that are really interested in them.
Yeah.
There are others that are going about doing their own thing. I was just thinking about that carcass, thinking about our human body that we spend so much time taking care of. We are, as we're talking about, we are spirit.
Mm-hmm.
We are just inside this body.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the second coming, I like the first coming of Mark 9:1, where Jesus says, there be some that stand here among us now that will no wise taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was referring to Christ coming. I don't know
Right.
the second coming.
Right.
Christ coming.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes. I did not see anything about that. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that one, but I did not see that. Okay, next we're going to turn to Matthew 7. Yes.
You think it was just like an accident or something?
Do what?
Why was the little word? I mean, I'm 95% sure it sounds like
Right.
I'm very on with that theory, but I don't know why the literal word would have been evil. We don't know.
Right. Yeah. I saw one person that said that it might be a reference to the military eagles that I don't know how the Roman army used military eagles, but they did in some way. I don't know if they were trained like falcons or something. I don't know. But most of them thought that vultures was the better rendering of it. Yes.
No, I heard this
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. I did say a few things about it, and the doctrine of the rapture, the idea of the rapture, I don't know if doctrine is a good word, it is very prevalent among those that claim to follow Christ. There are a lot of people that believe there's going to be a literal rapture and literal 1,000-year reign, and this would feed right into what they think. Yeah. That is true. We haven't used this verse, but yeah, you got to next man up, and you got to have that kind of philosophy. And we used to tell guys, we used to tell the third string guy, you're 2 plays away from being the starter. Because if the person in front of you gets sick or gets hurt, and the next person up gets sick or hurt, you're up. So you got to stay ready. So that's true. Anyone else? Okay, let's turn to Matthew 7 and verse 1. I think this is one of the most misused verses in the Bible. Matthew 7, 1. Okay, here's what Matthew 7, 1 says. Judge not that you be not judged. And a lot of people read those words and they stop right there. And I imagine just about everybody here has had this verse as a card that's been pulled on you by somebody. Because it seems like in our culture, a lot of people want to take this verse and try to use it as a license for tolerance of anything that anybody wants to do. And I think that's a total misuse of the verse. Because there's a lot more to it than just saying you can't judge something. You know, if a Christian makes a comment that something's wrong, somebody doesn't like the comment, hey, judge not that you may not judge. Anybody ever had that pulled on them? I imagine most of us have. So let's look at the context of this, and let's see if we can determine what Jesus was talking about. Would someone read the first 5 verses of Matthew 7? Randy, okay?
Judge not, you do not judge. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, you measure back. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the speck in your own? For how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye? And look, the plank is in your own. Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye. Then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye.
All right. What does Jesus mean when he says, judge not that you be not judged? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Correct. How many times have we seen in the last year and a half with COVID? And I'm not making a stance on what you should or shouldn't do in precautions and preventing it. But people that have taken a hard line publicly, especially political officials, taking a hard line publicly on this is what everybody's got to do. We're going to make this a law. We're going to bind this on people. And then you see a video clip of them doing the total opposite when they don't think the cameras are on them. That makes it hard, I think, for some people to take them seriously. There may be things that they're saying that are right, that things that society needs to be doing. But then when they do the total opposite, I don't think they're following verse 2, because the judgment they're doing, because sometimes people have talked about how reckless, how inconsiderate people are that don't do the things that they want to pass in the law, and then they turn around and do the same thing themselves. And it doesn't have to be that. How many politicians or famous people have been brought down by corruption, have been brought down by infidelity? I mean, I can think of, well, I'm not going to name names, but I think most of us can name a lot of people that are politicians that have run their campaigns on family values. Or preachers too. You're right, preachers too. And sooner or later, they get caught doing the thing that they've been condemning. And it doesn't help their cause. And it doesn't help the cause of Christ any when Christians do that. But sometimes we do that. But we need to be very careful in the judgments we make, because as Ellis just said, it can be judged back to us. And I guarantee you, if you're a Christian, there are some people that are going to be trying to catch you in something wrong. They want to catch you in something wrong. And yeah, they delight in it. It's kind of like, this is near serious, but it's kind of like somebody that may be a fan of one team. Maybe it's an Auburn fan. I'll just take Auburn, Alabama. That's a huge rivalry. An Auburn fan loves it when some kind of controversy happens with Alabama. Or an Alabama fan loves it if some kind of controversy happens with Auburn. And sometimes, I've seen it, not necessarily those two schools, but I've seen one school loves it when a controversy happens to them, to the other school. But if it happens to them, all of a sudden, hey, we've got to defend it. We had reasons for this. This is not what it seems. Well, the same thing can happen in our lives. We've got to be very, very careful in the judgments we make. Now, when we make judgments, what should our judgment be based on? Yeah. Okay. If it's the truth of the Bible and I am applying it accurately and I'm examining my own life, I don't really think it's me that's making the judgment. The Bible's the one making the judgment. I've just got to be very, very careful the way I interpret it.
First Thessalonians 5:21 says two words: test everything.
Yeah.
If you read about that, it's talking about Satan testing whether it's evil, which is of the devil, or good as of God. So we've got to be able to test it to make sure what it's of. What it's of. By your fruits you shall know them. That's the same situation.
Yeah, correct.
I think in this verse we're talking about, not First Thessalonians 5:21, but in this verse there's two phrases, two words. One of them is hypocritical, and the other is self-righteous.
Very, very correct. Very correct. Yes.
So this whole section for some of them now is a lot of us look at it as Jesus even said it's a new way of thinking. Understanding his audience. He said way back in chapter 5, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. And then he goes on to define what those are. You've heard, but I say unto you, you've heard, but I say unto you. Time after time, he starts these phrases and paragraphs that way. And he goes from what you've heard the Pharisees say all the way into the heart. And so, even this section is somewhat about the heart, what's inside the heart. So, the audience he's talking to, think about, being overly critical, just being a constant, opposite of building somebody up, encouragement, discourage, just that constant nagging, hatred, I guess if you will, or Alabama all like bad things that happen to people. Just that whole heart concept and this whole concept of here to change things. My way is different from anything you've ever heard. And that's what he's kind of going through all these passages. This is what you've heard before, this is what the Pharisees teach. But I say, all in heart.
And thank you. And the things when Jesus brings up the "but I say," he usually has something that's even stricter than the Pharisees. But he doesn't have all the man-made traditions in it. Randy said it goes back to the heart. Is my heart in the right place? Yes.
Yeah, I would say there are a couple things that are problematic. I mean, I think that I can't do better than the contextual definitions that they just provided that make it less sense. the parable itself doesn't make sense in terms of their interpretation. Otherwise, the things in their eyes wouldn't have been made. There would be no parable to be had. It would just be like, who cares about those spots in your eyes?
Yeah.
That would be terrible. And the major headings, the narrow and the wide gate, there's the next heading. The narrow and the wide gate, the true and the false prophet, the true and the false disciple, the wise and the foolish ruler of the children. In other words, all the parables that follow that are distinctions between the right and the wrong, where there is a definite teaching. And it doesn't make the distinction between what is teaching on the one hand and judging on the other, which goes along with the judgment of the heart, or the self-righteousness, or the hypocrisy. And Jesus' ministry really doesn't make any sense. Why you won't have a Bible if that's the interpretation?
Okay. Anyone else?
I would say that in AA they have one concept that people they start from, and that's the idea of what we call intellectual discovery and alcoholics. In our mind, we remember the word tennis will make them striving to become less embarrassed by stupid things we've done.
It's okay.
That we're continually on an upward path, trying to be on an upward path, constantly understanding that we are subject to failure and subject to fall. And I think if we go into talking to people with that more of that attitude that, yes, I'm bringing up something I think we need to change, and I think that what you're doing is subject to the Bible. And I am constantly battling with things that may not be the same thing you are, but still bad.
Okay.
Things that sometimes when you think of judging, it's coming from an air of superiority instead of I'm understanding the difficulty of what I'm asking you to do. And I struggle with it myself.
Okay. One thing that's really difficult, and I think we've got to be very careful with, because there are some dangers in this. First thing we've mentioned, I'm going to bring sharper judgment on myself if I do this. The other thing, I better make sure my own house is in order before I do this. And the other thing, I've got to really look at my heart. Why am I saying this? Because if I'm going to try to help somebody with the problem that I perceive in their life, I need to make sure I've earned the right to help them. I can't just walk up to somebody off the street I don't know, or somebody that I don't know very well, and try to help them out of a tough situation that might involve some very delicate conversations if they don't know me from Adam, or they don't know that I have their best interests in heart, and that I'm trying to help them. I have to earn the right to do that. I know in coaching we used to say that if the players know you care, you can coach them harder, because they know you love them and they know you're doing it for their own good. But if they don't know you care, all that's going to do is lead to resentment, and they're going to tune you out, not paying any attention to you. Well, it's kind of the same way with I'm dealing with people. So that's one danger we've got. Did you mention fruits?
I did.
Or somebody mentioned, well, you mentioned some verses at the bottom.
Right, well, the three sections at the bottom.
Yeah, let's look at verses 15 through 20. Would you mind reading 15 through 20 for us?
Okay. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, and a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit you will recognize them.
Okay, if I want to determine whether something's good fruit or bad fruit, do I have to make any kind of judgment there? Probably do. Yeah. Yeah, you have to taste it, okay? You're going to have to make a judgment on that one. I've never had anybody that's used verse 1 to me about judge not that you be not judged. It's gone down to this part about trying to tell the difference in good fruit and bad fruit. I've heard that Brother Marshall Keeble once said in a sermon that God did not call me to be a judge, but He did call me to be a fruit inspector. That's a pretty good thing to keep in mind. But again, I've got to make sure my own life is in order. And the hypocrisy part is the other danger, the hypocrisy part. I think Jesus illustrates that in a very humorous way back up in verses 3 and 4. I saw one time a caricature of it that somebody had drawn, and it showed a guy with a huge 2x4 like object out of his eye, somebody with a speck of dust, and he's trying to help the person with the speck of dust. You know, I can't imagine going to an optometrist with a problem and the optometrist walking in with the 2x4 sticking out of his eye, and he's going to examine my eyesight. I'm probably going to leave and go to a different optometrist. Sometimes I think we've got to be careful because we can do that. We can, out of bad motives, out of a feeling of superiority or self-righteousness, we can make judgments on others when we've got problems. So all of us have problems. We're all sinners, so we've got to be very careful with our attitude in it. Mike?
We always heard that saying, the church is not a museum for saints, it's a hospital for sinners, and we're all sinners.
Yes.
The other one I love says, in God's hospital, which is the human race, in God's hospital, we are all caregivers. We're givers and takers. And that's how we need to approach every relationship we come in contact.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments on this one? We've only got about 6 minutes left, so the one I was going to do next, I don't think we can do in 6 minutes. Let's go to Matthew 19 and look at verse 24. We'll get as much of this as we can done. So Matthew 19, verse 24. Okay, this verse says, "And again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." Okay, what is Jesus talking about here when he says the eye of a needle? Now, I've seen two possibilities. One possibility is that it's just what you think it is when you read it. You've got a needle with an eye, and it's very, very, very small. And I've heard people say, I think maybe taking this out of context a little bit, that Jesus is saying that it's actually and literally easier for you to put a big, huge camel through that little eye than it is for a rich person to go to heaven, so all rich people are evil. I don't think that's what Jesus is saying. The other possibility I've heard people say is that there was a place in the wall of Jerusalem that was very, very small, and it was often referred to as the needle's eye, and that it would be practically impossible for a camel to get through it because the camel would have to get so low on the ground it couldn't possibly get through that, and that's what Jesus is talking about. One of the commentators I read said this about that second possibility. He said that this was an attempt by modernists who want to try to minimize things in the Bible to rationalize what Jesus was saying, that Jesus wasn't really talking about the eye of a needle. This was something natural that the people would have been familiar with. They probably would have been familiar with the eye of a needle too. And we're getting close on time, so let's just kind of cut to the chase on this. Can a rich person go to heaven on their own? Can a poor person go to heaven on their own? No. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. And the definition of rich really depends on your viewpoint. I think rich is somebody that's got more than us, but we would never consider ourselves to be rich. There is a missionary in Nigeria that I've had contact with for probably about 30 years. And he was a contact for me through World Bible School. And one time I was sending him some World Bible School materials, and there wasn't quite enough to fill the box I had. So I was looking for something that I could use to pack the box so the material in it wouldn't rattle around. And I remember that he had young kids at home. Well, at the time, our kids were probably preschool age. So I'm going through thinking, what could I do? And we had a big box of Happy Meal toys. I mean, it had all kinds of Happy Meal toys in it. And a lot of them were duplicates. You know, Jeff might have 5 of this, or Lori Beth might have 7 of these. So I just pulled out excess ones. I didn't ask them to do it because I knew they were never going to miss it. I pulled out maybe 15 or 20 little Happy Meal toys and used as packing around it so it wouldn't shake. Well, about a month later, I got an email back from him. He said, thank you so much for these precious toys. My children have felt like kings. They have never had anything like this to play with before. I'm thinking, these are Happy Meal toys. These are something that, you go to the McDonald's, you buy it, you play with it for 10 seconds, and you throw it down and you forget about it. And these children in Nigeria thought that this was something really, really special. It was to them. We just don't understand sometimes maybe the wealth that we have. But who do you think Jesus is talking about, or what do you think Jesus is talking about? We've got about 2 minutes about a rich man going to heaven. What would keep a rich man, make it so challenging for a rich man to go to heaven? Well, let's look at some other verses around us. Let's look at verses 16 through 26. I'll just read these. Now, behold, one came and said to him, Good teacher, what good things shall I do that I may have eternal life? He said to him, Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments. Which ones? Jesus said, You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The young man said to him, All these things I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack? Jesus said to him, If you want to be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you have treasure in heaven. Come, follow me. But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then Jesus said to his disciples, Surely I say to you, it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. When his disciples heard it, they were greatly astonished, saying, Who then can be saved? Now here's the key to this. Jesus looked at him and said, With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. I think the problem with the rich young ruler is his trust and his faith was in his riches. And as long as that was true, he wasn't going to be able to enter the kingdom of heaven because that was his God. In order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we have to be totally dependent on God and not totally dependent on riches. Riches can be wiped out in a minute. I know I've heard stories of when Wall Street fell back in the late 20s. People committed suicide on the spot. They just couldn't face life with all the despair and the poverty that they were afraid they were going to face. People were just totally out of whack with their priorities. And we've got to be careful with the same thing. Okay, any last comments before we close? Okay, I appreciate all the discussion. Appreciate you being here. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the week. And Andy should be back here next week. Thank you.